Hi, everybody. Hello. Welcome, Taylor Freeman. Thank you so much for supporting us in Meta Association, Non-Profitable Association, and Expo Metaverse, our events that you are doing great, super excited. So, Taylor, can you speak a little bit about yourself? So our topic here is to speak about education XR, and also would be great to have an overview of Axon Park. So that's it. It's with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for hosting this. It's great to see you. So yeah, my name is Taylor, and I've been involved in the virtual reality world since 2014. So basically, I was living in San Francisco when Oculus was acquired by Facebook, and I thought, how am I going to try this new exciting piece of technology? So started a little event series in San Francisco where I got to try the headset, and ever since that moment, it was just I knew that it was my purpose. Like the minute I put it on, I knew. And so since that moment, I've just been entirely focused on the space. And as part of that, I think the thing originally that was so inspiring and that just has so much incredible promise is the ability of this technology to fundamentally unlock new perspectives, fundamentally unlock new ways of thinking for humans that really have never been accessible to us because we haven't had access to these perspectives and to a tool like virtual worlds that can actually fully immerse you with embodied presence in a world that might be at an atomic scale or a cosmic scale. And those are the things that really inspire me and drive me. And the thing that I've been working on recently is a project called Axon Park. And the idea behind the company is that immersive education is truly that golden nugget of the space. I believe. I think it's something that will completely transform the way that people learn and the way that they understand information, the world, each other. And so I've been working on this company now for about 3 years, building out a platform and infrastructure for learning in these virtual worlds. So if you have a headset, then you can go in through a headset and you can have full embodied presence and really get the most out of the experience, I believe, from the full embodied presence. Or if you don't have a VR headset or you find them uncomfortable or you get motion sick, then you can also use flat screen devices to access this virtual world and work with your friends all connected. So cross-platform, you can be speaking with and interacting with people who are on different devices to you and different platforms. So that's really our mission and goal. And I think, it's just the very, very beginning of all of this. So yeah, really excited to be here. I actually, as you know, Flavio, I spent almost a year living in Brazil and had just the time of my life and had the pleasure of meeting you and the Broders team and so many amazing people down there. So, huge shout out to the Brazilian family. I really love it down there, and I'd love to come back sometime and visit you all.
Oh, that's great, man. Was a great time with you here, and it was like unbelievable. When I got in touch first, oh, this guy, oh, this guy is like it wasn't the beginning of the thing, he was like a kind of reference in the world of VR and this kind of stuff. Oh, okay, he's almost my neighbor here in Rio. And, yeah, so it was great, and also like all the connections, this kind of new thing, and we do this with so much passion, right? Then it's become fun. It's become like a pleasure to work with this. It's nice because when we are doing this with I don't know, for 3 years. I remember 3 years ago, then you were here in Brazil, and speaking about like the possibilities, what it can do in this in the markets, and the thing is, it's really nice, that I can see how you're going and growing, and developing, and it's still like even by the distance we still keep in touch, still have this connection. If there's this kind of leads like that put us together, and I'm pretty sure that the future of these new technologies, and also the future of the creative and the structure the way you are creating to keep us connected, much more than just a video call, using this kind of new technologies and the possibilities to have now. And please, Taylor, you need to show something to us. I think this is going to create less boundaries, create us, put us together easily, and now have the feeling of presence. Let's say that I can get glasses and have you here as a projection, so we can have this kind of, spatial meeting, like the sense of the presence of the person. Okay, I cannot touch you, I cannot hug you, but at least I can see you by my side, and I can have the audio that is special, so this kind of techie that bring us more immersive, it's very promising, to make people more together, even if you are super far away. Right now you are in Malta, right?
I am.
How many kilometers we are?
Oh, I couldn't tell you. Thousands and thousands and thousands from. Are you in Sao Paulo currently?
No, I'm right now in Porto Alegre, in Tecnopuc, the place that the event's gonna happen. And
Okay.
yeah, so we are doing this recording to show in 2 days. So that's the idea of the talks, like recording, put everybody together, and they're gonna be here with us again, like in the opening, right? The first panel is gonna be with you, Albert, Pablo Bioni, and oh, it's funny because I'm telling you this, but I don't know if the talk is gonna be before. Of course, it's gonna be after people know you, so everybody knows you now. So I can say, hey, good to see you again, guys. I'm back here.
Hello again.
Yeah. So this is kind of things of technologies, like that can bring us to think and rethink and make the possibilities. But the concept and the reason of these events, is to communicate, to give information to the people so they know more about what is Metaverse, what is the ecosystem. Because when you speak about platform, it's something, Axon Park, it's a platform of Metaverse that has the mission, right, to give education, to share knowledge, right? And you have like a bunch of Metaverse platforms that it's entertainment, and then we're gonna have like a new things that won't be social, but still be considered as a Metaverse. So, well, I think the idea more is like, so how can you bring to the people that are watching us, okay, a better vision of how's going to be the education with XR? We know that's promising, but how's going to be people getting together, and learning, and why they're going to use these technologies. So if you can fill these gaps, it's going to be great.
Yeah, and Flavio, you touched on a really important point earlier about the feeling of being present with each other. And I think when you look at the current problems that face remote learning, because in-person learning, that's kind of another thing, right? If you can actually be with people and you can be engaging with them, you can't quite replace that, at least yet. So in the future, we'll see where that goes. But for the time being, the real issue is that you just feel disconnected, right? You're on different planes of existence. One example that I heard recently that really resonated with me is if you and I are having a conversation and I kind of lean in like this, right? It looks like maybe I'm reading a notification on my screen, like an email just popped up. So it's hard to actually gauge whether that was a social cue of me being interested or actually distracted. Whereas if you and I are sitting in the same space and you say something interesting and I lean in like this, you feel my interest, you feel my engagement, right? And you just lose that on these flat screens. So just simply by sharing the same space, even if it's virtual space, and by being embodied and being present, you can demonstrate a lot of these cues, these nonverbal cues that are so powerful and so important to us as humans. And so again, looking to your question around, why would we use VR? What are the impacts? How will this transform things? So first of all, one example I like to think about is when you look at a platform like Khan Academy, the online learning platform. Some of you might be familiar with it. It's basically free videos, a lot of content that went from prior to Khan Academy. A lot of it was generally static content. So it was pictures, it was text, it was just more sort of like a textbook style content. And then the team at Khan Academy started to just do little animated videos that were so basic, right? It was like a virtual pen on a virtual blackboard with, Sal Khan's voice explaining. Again, not Hollywood production by any stretch, but the engagement and the way that people could actually feel like they were part of the content. They felt like it was alive. They felt like it was engaging. That little jump made them explode, right? It made it so much more accessible for people to get access to this content, to understand it, to retain it. And so we often think about, in the VR world, you've got some incredible, incredible projects that are happening, right? Companies like Dreamscape, I think it was something like they invested 20 million, or they got 20 million from some university to build some huge center and highly immersive narrative experiences. And, that kind of content is truly, truly incredible. But at the same time, it's nearly impossible to scale, at least with the current tools. Maybe with generative AI and things that are coming, it will accelerate. But right now, it just takes months and months. It takes, a big team of developers and artists. And so the way that we've been thinking about it is, how do we take that equivalent of the Khan Academy leap? How do we go from where we are today to something that is better, but doesn't have to be Hollywood cinema level better, but is still significantly better and hits the problems of engagement, disconnection from each other, and this feeling of just passive, sort of just disengagement, really just being passive in the learning experience. So the way that we've been thinking about it is, how do we take a lot of the existing content that has been created by brilliant professors, by educators, and enable them to bring it into a virtual space that immediately, just upon it arriving in the space, becomes social, where you can be present with other people. It becomes interactive. You have to actually move through the space to engage with the content. So you're not even really creating that much more content. You're just delivering it in a way with these new tools that are now really only becoming possible at a mass market scale, in a way that truly is engaging and takes that little step forward. So, you compare on one side the student who is sitting passively in their chair watching videos, maybe occasionally taking the quiz, to the student who's now actively engaged, moving through the space, having to be present the whole time and engage the whole time. They can't not be, because they just stand in one spot and they don't progress, right? So that's how we're thinking about it. And I guess I told you a little bit about one of the worlds. There's one that I can show publicly if you'd like to just see, kind of for the viewers too. This is just our interpretation. There's going to be so many different ways of going about this, and people that are probably way smarter than we are figuring out cool and innovative ideas. And so we're always open to feedback. We're always open to ideas. But I can quickly go ahead and share this, if that's all right, Flavio.
Please, absolutely, for sure.
All right, so this is some internal stuff that we are working on. All right, it should start. All right, so is this coming through here for you? Yep.
Yeah, it's working.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see
so
the sun. That's good.
I'm sure it's fairly pixelated, but this is a virtual classroom. So rather than a lecture theater where you have a bunch of rows of desks with some students in the back, some students in the front, they can't really see, everyone's just sitting there falling asleep in their chair. At least that's what I did when I was a student. This world basically gives you a full space, so an interactive museum style space. So let's say over here, maybe you want to see the solar system a little closer up. You can come in here. You can see all the movements of the planets, right? You can engage with the planets. You could even, if you wanted to, you could set it up so you teleport down to the surface of Mars for a little Mars rover experience.
Yeah, and also it's amazing, awesome, because you're there and you have the scale, right? The difference between the size of one planet to the other planet. So it's represented. So it's really cool.
Yeah, the movement of the planets is actually proportionate. So the rotation speed, the orbit speed is actually accurate relative to, you can see Saturn and Jupiter versus the Earth or Mars. So it does teach you. If we actually tried to replicate the scale, the distance between, we would need an absolutely massive world, which we can talk about a little bit later. So a little teaser.
Sure.
We're going to talk about nanite in VR a little later in this, but
Oh,
basically
please.
You've got a world like this. Then maybe you want to take a meeting with one of your professors where you're just talking, you're sharing some knowledge together. And then maybe you want to teleport over to the medical simulation lab. So you can run through a teleportation portal. Then now you're in this lab with your professor. So again, you have this opportunity to create these networked worlds. This is all social, multiplayer enabled. It's network replicated. So if you grab an object in VR, someone who's on flat screen can see it. They can grab it from you and you've let go, or you can steal it from them, depending on what type of programming you want to do. And then one thing I'll show as well is sort of a concept that we have for this learning journey format. So there are a lot of different ways to do this. Again, some of the stuff that is the more later, like more recent stuff, we're still not quite showing publicly, but this is an example of, maybe you take a guided journey through the space. Welcome. This is a short learning journey example. So the first operative is to go find the operating room when we're ready. So, okay, so we'll go over here. Okay, no, not in there. Ah, there it is, right? Again, very, very basic, but just to show an example of, how this could work, right? You can run away with the heart. And you can see one thing too is we're using Unreal Engine 5. So we're going for really high quality visuals. That's very important to us. So you can see if you look at the heart, the light reflecting off the heart here. I don't know over the stream if it's going to really work so well, but
it's doing great.
Yeah, the tools that we have access to these days are just truly, truly amazing. Unreal Engine 5 and the whole suite of other software. So yeah, that's just a quick little glimpse into how these worlds could work. Of course, you can customize all these worlds. You can place 3D models and content and slides and videos and little interactive moments where we joke around. One thing that we're trying to do that I haven't seen a lot of other platforms do really is to think about the more broad world, right? And what's happening in the world, right? It's not just all about the user being in the world and interacting with things, but maybe there are birds that are flying around and they have a behavioral pattern that's natural, that's procedural, right? And there are other animals in the space, and there's vegetation that's growing and evolving, and there's just a whole world that's part of this, that's evolving, that's not just some static mesh 3D model that's just sitting there. Because I think one thing that people really want is to have an experience and feel like they're immersing themselves in this world. And so that's really important to us. We've been joking recently, we've been building a lot of bird tech, right? So we have a whole joke internally about bird tech. So these smart AI birds that you can interact with and feed, and they fly around. And it's just these fun little moments, right? That don't necessarily have to do with like learning something specific, but just bring joy to people and just make it a fun experience. So that is just
I think this kind of AI, it's pretty interesting and important to make you don't get bored, let's say, because like, okay, so you're there, we have people, okay, but if you're alone before like rich people, or like, or maybe you're not in the situation, we always get distracted with things, and also if you can put some AI in this kind of stuff, like to have a behavior like a birds or something, animals, this also connect us with something that are familiar. So it's really cool because make you to relax, I'm familiar with this, like one of the things that you usually do in these metaverse platforms is like, oh, let's try to represent something real, like let's have a building, then have walls. We don't need this, we can do whatever, but we prefer to do this because make you to feel comfortable, because this kind of environments, so how to manage by this place. This is super cool. Well, another thing that before you jump to this promo we have about statistics, like how can we give to when you use this kind of platforms, how can you give me some dashboard and data that's relative to understand how much the person is getting the knowledge. This is like super nice. Like you can know the engage, of course, and also you can create some kind of interactive stuff to analyze the performance of the person. Maybe you can speak better about this.
Yeah. So that's a really, really good point. And you run into a lot of data privacy stuff. So for us, we want to be incredibly transparent with users. One thing that we also want to do that I think a lot of companies sort of, they have these terms of service and these data policies that are just so incredibly intense and legalese, and you have to be a lawyer to understand them, especially if it's not your first language as well. So one thing for us is when we do the public launch of the platform, the plan is to have very, very clear data privacy policies that are legible, like just in plain English. This is what you're agreeing to. If not, click here. We understand. So I just want to say that, because that is a really important factor for the future. Because as you mentioned, when you're in an immersive space, right? Let's say you have, your hand controllers and you reach out and then you grab an item and you move it back. In that little movement, right, the speed of how long you reach out, the time between when you grab the object, do you pull it up to your face and look at it? Do you put it to the side? There's so much information that can be captured, right? It's an overwhelming amount of information. And when you think about how a user engages in a space, let's say that a user wants us to collect all the information to train an AI to work with them, to assist them, right? So that's another big piece for us. So the name Axon Park, there's a whole sci-fi backstory that will be coming out over time. But the gist is that there's this sentient artificial intelligence that calls itself Axon. And so Axon is the creator of Axon Park, and also a companion, a tutor, a guide for these people in the space. And of course, we're limited by the technology that exists today. And over time, the idea is to get Axon to a point where it can truly actually work with the learner to support them, to empower them, to help them overcome obstacles that they're facing, to answer questions, and to really help them hit those aha moments faster. That's what we really strive for, those aha moments. So yeah, in terms of the data collection side, if you can understand how people are interacting with the world, how they're interacting with each other, right? It's kind of like if you were sitting in a classroom, sort of like fly on the wall behind a one-way mirror, and you were watching different students, and you sat there for a month of classes watching and watching. You'd be able to tell, okay, this person is typically the class clown. This person is the one that's quiet, but then when they speak, they really ask a really detailed, thoughtful question. These people typically jump in to support when someone else has a question. And then you look at their grades and you say, okay, this person typically performs well in math. This person typically performs well in language. And you can start to build a mental model, right? As a human being, you can start to understand. Once you start to supercharge the system with all these micro data points of just the milliseconds between when someone takes action, and you have enough information, you can build these incredible models that is still theoretical for us. We haven't actually started to implement this, but you could really build a system that could get to know the learner and could respond to the learner in a way that would be very, very difficult for another platform to capture, just simply because you have full body presence that's being tracked in the space. So that's a whole different thing. I mean, right now we have a very simple dashboard, you could say, that is taking data in real time from the application. So when you reach out and you complete a task, it'll say, okay, Flavio reached out, picked up this item, took action with that item at this exact time and completed it. And then it just says, Flavio did all these steps and completed this and made these mistakes relative to the correct sequence. So that kind of information is, very doable, relatively simple to set up these days. It's just when you start thinking about this next generation of building these models of each learner that can truly understand them and empower them, that's where this starts to get really interesting. Like, you imagine decades in the future, each person could have the best tutor in the world that knows them better than anyone else, how they learn, how they engage, and could be with them all along that path to just help them accelerate their learning beyond what we could even imagine today.
I was muted. Yeah, no, it's amazing. It's amazing, and I love the name Axon. Now makes sense.
Yeah, and the axon. So the whole idea is based on neuroscience. So within the brain, you have the neurons, and within the neuron, there's a specific part of the neuron called the axon. And so basically, in very simplified terms, right, the electrical signal comes into the neuron, and then it creates an electronic charge that then fires what's called an action potential down the axon. So it's basically, when you're thinking, it's basically a bunch of moments of firing and then a signal being sent down your axon. So the way that we think about it is Axon Park is this network of neurons, right? We're not going to make it look like neurons because we want to make it cooler looking than that. But it's inspired by this idea so that as people use the platform, they're learning, the teleporter pad. When you teleport around from the HQ space to different parts of the world, it's called the axon park hillock, right? So in the neuron, there's a part of the neuron called the axon hillock, and it's where the information flows in, and then from there it gets processed and it shoots down the axon. So it's kind of like the Grand Central Station or like a teleporter pad, right? So we want to teach people about neuroscience simply just by them using the application, right? One that's just too ridiculous not to use is the hippocampus, right? We got to use the hippocampus for learning. But yeah, so that's one thing for us. Like, we want to truly embody learning and education, and we believe that neuroscience is probably one of, if not the most exciting, most important frontiers that, like, we'll look back a couple decades from now and say, we didn't know anything about neuroscience. Like, and we know that we know nothing right now. So if we can play a role in supporting that, that's really exciting for us as well. So that's where the name Axon comes from.
No, it makes a lot of sense. Also, like, I'm seeing a lot of neurosensors, like being developing to bring you a lot of information, and some like SDK that makes this easier to integrate with your system, with your app, to have this feedback as something that you can use. So you can, I'm pretty sure that you're probably like researching about this too, like it makes a lot of sense because it's neuroscience, etc. But I saw I think 2 or 3 prototypes of VR glasses with neuro sensors. One was like a good looking, and the other one was like a super, super Frankenstein, like a lot of cables and this kind of stuff. But the thing is, it's very promising because, well, we have this interaction of the person. So if you have neurosensors that can indicate the brains, and you can have like sensors in the body to analyze how tense and stressed you are. So, and then you can have the artificial intelligence to analyze these informations. It's a lot of inputs that it can bring us outputs, and possibly to increase and make this more engaging. So amazing. That's it. I got it. So what is the surprise? I want to see it.
Oh, so yeah, basically, if anyone here has been working with Unreal Engine, you may have noticed that the recent features that have been sort of the big standout features in Unreal Engine 5 were Nanite and Lumen. So Nanite is basically allowing you to have way, way, way more in the scene than you could have prior to Nanite. So it's allowing for very complex, large worlds. Then you have Lumen, which is global illumination. So it's modeling how light works in a way that is just absolutely beautiful. I mean, it's really stunning the way that it works. It, to our testing and to our knowledge, does not work at all in VR really right now, in any sort of way that would be functional for the world. But Nanite, the new release of Unreal 5.1 came out yesterday, and so some of our team was hacking around with Nanite and getting it running in VR. And so we did a little test this morning on our team call, and I recorded it because it was just so wild to see this. So, like, if you think it'd be cool to share, I can share this with everyone, which is basically, it's not that wild. Like, when you look at it, it doesn't look, oh, that's like an entirely new thing. But when you understand what's going on here, so I will go ahead and do this. All right. See if this is sharing. So what's truly remarkable about this is that before Nanite, you would have, a few million polygons for a desktop VR experience. You'd have a few million polygons, maybe on the high side of single-digit millions, and then you'd have on Quest, high side of a few 100K, right? Sub 1 million polys, and then like you have to think about your textures, and you just quickly fill up the budget very quickly. So what Nanite has done is, you can see now this scene, even though it's simple, when you look at the landscapes outside, there are tens and tens of millions of polygons running. And my co-founder is in here in VR getting, not amazing FPS. Like, I think he was saying it was roughly about 60 FPS, but still, I mean, with tens of millions of polygons, this is what is enabling truly next generation immersive experiences where you could have a massive city miles and miles wide with a ton of detail and intricacy that you can just go and explore. And it's when you think about something like the Oasis, like, you know, this is the foundation for infrastructure like the Oasis. It's tools like this. It's a major leaps forward advancements like this that is going to take us there. So still have a ways to go until we're at the Oasis level, but this is a very cool step. So I'm sure it's going to be choppy and blurry, but you can see all this out here, all these rocks, millions and millions and millions of polys. These are all 3D models. So if you were to try to do this on a traditional UE4, right, or in Unity, your headset would probably explode, your computer would melt, right? Like it just wouldn't, it wouldn't happen. So
Yeah,
again,
it would crash for sure. Yeah, like we are doing some WebXR experience, you know, in the platform, and we have 100,000 polygons as limits. Because if you put more than this, it won't work well in iPhone, for example, even if it's a new iPhone, because they are very strict with this, you know, because of performance. You know, they keep the performance to the old iPhones, and then it's become laggy also. If the textures, you don't this kind of looking you're showing me, it's amazing, Taylor. And also when you put together and one thing just to clarify, Oasis, you're speaking about the Steven Spielberg movie, right? Red Blame 1. Okay,
Yeah.
so so that environment super cool. So for people that watch the movie, for people that didn't watch the movie yet, do it. It's amazing. It's super cool. Super cool. Put you inside of this idea, the concept of a metaverse and the people that are going to interact there. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And also the lack of 3D environments that you can use with artificial intelligence. You know, we have the panel with Jim Kogan about this. It's also very impressive how we are developing AI, machine learning for this. And the most interest about this, it's okay. Unreal, of course, it's a private company, but they release this as free, you know, and you can use free use. Of course, have to develop something, you have to do some, you know, percentage of the business, right? If I'm correct. And but people are working in artificial intelligence to do this open source, you know, to really democratize it. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of what Unreal Engine is doing. I mean, they're really walking the walk. You know, they're reinvesting this, you know, tremendous amount of money that they're generating. I think Fortnite generated just under $6 billion or something in that realm last year alone. I think over 20 billion total. People, you know, buying cosmetic items and emotes and things. I mean, there's a whole other conversation here, which is like integration of Web3 technologies into all of this, which is something we're very focused on, and just enables incredible community opportunities, incredible investment opportunities, incredible incentivization opportunities, that once people have these experiences, I just see it being very difficult to go back to the old sort of static way of interacting with sort of Web 2 platforms, because ownership, you know, it's interesting. It's a new concept for the virtual world, right? To actually own something. We're now just becoming able and aware as society that that's something that we haven't had, right? And it's very exciting and plays into all of this. And just as one little, you know, note here. So you were saying 100,000 polys for WebVR. So there have been a number of tests. One that was quite famous, that they did 10 billion polygons in nanite, and it hypothetically can go significantly higher than 10 billion. So like just orders and orders and orders of magnitude higher than it was possible before. It's very nerdy stuff, but it's like so important when we look back on this. This is like a very defining type of technology. So, and it can also be used for a lot of other things that I think, you know, to anyone watching this, like, you know, if there's something that you think is like a massive data set that is just computationally very restrictive to work with traditional computing, I would think that the nanite technology and the way that they're utilizing these tools to basically get access to certain parts of the information and render it in real time can unlock opportunities across so many different areas. So just the tech in itself for other use cases is very interesting.
Amazing to do. Thanks for sharing. Well, so let's go for the last words.
Last words. Is there anything in particular that you'd want to touch on?
No, I think it's a really good introduction. Maybe I can just tell to the public that well, try to look for good informations in the web. You know, like when you want to know more about the metaverse, want to know more about education, because since like this is the topic, right, to speak about education. So I think it would be nice if you can give some tips for this person that want to get more deeper in the team, you know, like know more about it.
Yeah, so I'd say to that point, if anyone is interested in diving into education, specifically in virtual worlds, you know, feel free to reach out to myself or to our team. And, you know, if you're really passionate about working in this space, you know, we're happy to try to support that. You know, it's so important to us to see this all succeed as an industry. So, you know, doing that, there are a ton of resources for learning Unreal Engine, for learning Unity, although I'm sure that there are a lot of Unity people out there. I think Unity is great, but I do have to say what Unreal is doing with all these new tools is just remarkable. I just love the tool. So I would highly recommend actually getting into Unreal at this point. And yeah, just starting to explore. You know, we'll be, if you sign up for our mailing list, we'll be announcing like our development kits that will be coming, and tools for creators to easily build immersive courses. And we want to abstract it down so that you don't have to know how to write C++. You don't have to know how to program to actually build really fun, compelling experiences. The same way you don't need to know how to program to build a beautiful PowerPoint or to make a beautiful video in Premiere, for example. So that, and then also too, you know, because there are so many people that are working in XR and Metaverse, please take the XRI survey. So if you go to xrinclusion.org, there's a survey that is running right now to help really understand the composition of the industry, who's being included, who's not represented in the space, what we can do as an industry to really support. So yeah, if you're watching this, please, you know, it takes about 5 minutes, totally anonymous. It would really help the team to do that. And then the team will be publishing a report early next year with all those findings and information, so you can get early access to that. And yeah, aside from that, I mean, it's just a very exciting time in the industry. And like, you know, another thing too is, one thing that people often tell me is, you know, but it's not mass market, you know, how are you going to build a learning platform that's going to really help a lot of people in the world if, you know, only this many people, you know, a few tens of millions maybe have a headset at their disposal. But what I would say is, you know, think about a program like Roblox, right? When you look at Roblox, at least in the US, you know, 75% of the kids between 9 and 12 years old are playing Roblox regularly, right? That's, I think they, I don't know the exact statistic, but I think it's like over 200 million, maybe just shy of 250 million active users. Maybe it's more now. I haven't looked super recently, but that's, you know, if there are 2.5 billion gamers in the world to 3 billion, depending on what statistics you look at, that's still 10%, you know, which is not tiny, and it's just the beginning, right? So like something like Roblox, we like to think of ourselves as the combination between like a Roblox and a Udemy, or a Roblox and a Coursera, which, you know, is still very accessible right now. So don't get discouraged if someone tells you it's too early. You know, just be smart with how you're doing it, and just keep going. And please, yeah, reach out if you have any questions.
And the most important, have fun doing this, you know, have pleasure. It's something that we always have to bring, you know, passion to have results. Yeah. So
absolutely.
Taylor, thank you so much, man. Thanks for sharing us with us. So it's so good to see you. And that's it. Bye-bye, guys. See you soon.
Ciao. Have a good show.